talk to you all today about how bad, or really how much, I used to drink back whenever I was really in the swing of being an alcoholic, basically. This would have been back whenever I was still in the Air Force, stationed up at Elmendorf Air Force Base. And it was me and my wife, freshly moved out of the dorms. I was drinking heavily well before this point, but I kind of wanted to get to where I remember what like a normal Saturday would be and kind of go through that, because I kind of get, or have more of a understanding and more in depth on how much I actually was consuming compared to during the time, because to me it was just whatever. But looking back on it, it was pretty crazy, and this isn't necessarily something that I've talked about to many people before, not necessarily because I'm ashamed, but more like it's, I guess, not the most normal conversation that most people have. But my drink of choice was Coors Light beer, and of course it tastes gross, disgusting, everything else. I don't drink at all anymore, luckily, but let's go into it. So what a normal Saturday for me looked like on Elmendorf Air Force Base. This would have been back in 2018, probably, right around that time period. And so on probably a Friday or maybe a Thursday, I would have gone to what they call the BX, which is like this shop at on base, and there was a small one that was like a gas station that was right up the street from the place that I was staying at the time. And I would go there and pick up 230 racks of Coors Light. So that is, I think, either 30 or 32 cans of Coors Light actually come in the actual box. And so between 60 and 64 beers, and between Friday after work and Sunday evening, all of those beers would be gone. And so this is what Saturday would look like. So I drank all night Friday, probably passed the hell out, and I would wake up, I would, whatever time, probably later, 9, 10, something like that, on Saturday, I would be feeling completely nauseous, of course, because I'm waking up to a hangover, a pretty strong hangover at that. And I would pour out my canteen. So what I realized was that I could put my beer into a canteen, and that would keep it colder than just the little thin skin of the beer itself. And so I did that, which would have been drinking on that Friday night. So that morning I would have stale, warm beer in there. So I would probably just toss that out and start another one. And on drinking that first one, or first few, because normally I would pour 2 into that canteen because it could fit both of them since it was a larger canteen. And then I would probably get nauseous to the point to where I would have to throw up within like maybe an hour or two of being awake. And once I got that over with, I was able to just keep drinking. I like to drink on a empty stomach because it made the alcohol, I feel like, kick in faster, and not only faster but stronger, because beer wasn't necessarily doing it to me. But I never really just made the switch completely over to straight liquor, just because I didn't care for the taste and the burn, and I already knew that I had a massive enough problem on my hands already with this 5% piss water, basically, Coors Light. And I would be basically on that Saturday sitting around drinking all day. At this point, I had at least given up cigarettes and switched to vaping, which is something that I still do now, a habit that I should probably kick along with my alcohol addiction that I already had kicked and have. But that's what I was doing. And sometimes me and my wife would drink together, but for the most part, she was complaining to me about my drinking justifiably, because I was definitely a massive screw up during some of that time period. I mean, I'm explaining to you. Okay, let's also go into the amount. So I started off with 2 that morning. We're probably doing 2 beers an hour, 8 hours, 10 hours, something like that. We're down 15, 20 beers, somewhere in the range of that throughout that day. And you go through at the minimum of 15 beers during a day, probably like 25 until maybe 11 or 12 at night, whenever I pass out from drinking too much, maybe 1. And so there goes the 50, 60 beers that I bought that Friday, and have me basically almost running out by midday on Sunday. And this was just a continuation. Whenever I wasn't at work on just a normal weekday, just all you do is basically just sub out the fact that I get off at maybe, back then it was like 4 o'clock, and then the drinking just goes. And so it sucked, but back then I would justify it, thinking that any excuse that I gave, that was actually a reasonable excuse to be doing the damage that I was doing to my body and life. But that's where I was. And so that's a weekend. So we're really talking about maybe closer to 100 beers in a week. And it was definitely serious, because I realized how much trash, like basically between 60 and 80% of the trash that I would be taking out whenever I would be taking out the trash would be bottles. And you could hear whether it was glass bottles of beer or the actual cans, and that was almost all of the volume of our trash. And then of course the food waste and whatever else that we had throughout the week. And yeah, I tried to pick like the most important, or the most intense period. I would say that I might have even drank more during this period that I'm talking about than whenever I was actively clubbing and partying. But yep, that is it raw. So like, subscribe if you'd like to hear more on how I got over my addiction and how that helped my career, because it massively has helped me in my life to kick the bottle. You can click on the link in the description below, and see you guys later.